This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin, and with me this week for this very special minisode are two of our regular folks and one very special guest. This week on the show, I have Elsa Charretier.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I also have Kara Shamborski.
Hey.
And Paul Jasley.
Hello.
Thank you both. And thank you all three of you for joining me this week. This week we are here to talk to Elsa about all the fantastic things she has going for her, including her new art book that came out, as well as the book November she's working on with Matt Fraction. So Elsa, for the folks maybe that don't know some of your fantastic work, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm an artist, although I write as well, but primarily an artist. I've been working in comics for about 7 years. I started out with some license work. I work at DC, Marvel. I did some creator-owned work as well. And some Star Wars. I've been doing some Star Wars and it's been fantastic. And for the past couple of years, I kind of left, licensed comics to focus more on creator-owned. And that's where I'm right now. I'm working on November, as you mentioned earlier, with Matt Fraction, and it's a series of graphic novels, and we have done, the first one came out, the second one is about to come out, and that's been pretty much my whole life for about a year and a half. So yeah, that's about it.
Fantastic. I was very lucky enough to have a copy of your art book mailed to me, which thank you so much for that. It's a fantastic, huge book that I found myself just staring at for a very long time, as each page is just this massive, wonderful series of images. I guess, could you tell us a little bit about how that art book came together?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty, it was not planned. It's kind of stupid. I hurt my drawing hand a few months back in about, I think it was October, and I couldn't draw for a few weeks. And instead of, taking a vacation, I got bored really, really fast and decided I wanted to learn graphic design and InDesign. And I wanted to, I thought it would be a nice tool to, know how to use. And so I started...
Sure.
I'll just put together a quick sketchbook to practice, and then the sketchbook turned into an art book, and the art book turned into a Kickstarter campaign, and so it's kind of snowballed from there. But that's the starting point. Was I hurt my hand and I wanted something to do, and it got out of hand after that.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, this book is crammed with incredible pieces of art, as well as like some little, I guess, I don't want to say narrative pieces, but like learning pieces and some, like, I guess, author creator notes that come with it. It's broken down into like 4 little sections of commissions, pieces from November, pieces from Star Wars, and then various covers. How did you go about choosing what pieces you wanted to include in this book?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's the one that I didn't feel too ashamed to share.
Okay.
The ones I was still kind of happy after some time it had passed. That's pretty much how the selection process happened. And
Gotcha.
About the narrative pieces that you talked about, I don't feel confident enough to do a whole book about how to draw, because I'm still learning, and I don't think I have lessons to give anyone, but I know that people are interested about knowing about artists' process and how we do things, and maybe we do it, it's not the ideal way of doing it, but that's how we make it work for us. And so I wanted to share that, how I go about, creating a cover or working on a page, or, and all the kind of thoughts that go into my head while I'm thinking about a piece. So I think it was, I'm interested about that with, other artists that I'm fans of. And I thought maybe I could share and see if people are interested. And it turns out people are interested by that sort of things, It kind of gives readers a window into understanding how comic artists work, because a lot of what we do seems a bit like voodoo for most people, but
Right.
There is the logic behind it. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. I feel very lucky to have a copy. The Kickstarter that you did was massively successful, at least in the terms of the amount of money that was pledged versus your initial goal. So congratulations on that. I know that was a little bit ago, but I hope to see a volume 2. I guess that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but maybe I just need some time to work on enough stuff that I'm comfortable enough to share. So that's not for tomorrow.
Yeah.
But definitely, it's been a really nice experience, and the Kickstarter has been, hugely successful, a lot more than I was expecting. I was, just hoping to get funded, and it turned out that I got a lot of support, and it was a very nice journey. Not only the putting the book together, but the whole campaign was really, really fun. And putting the book together after that, and getting to interact with readers and getting their feedback when they received the book and all that, is really, that sense of community that we don't often get as comic book artists because we work alone. I really appreciated that, and it made me think that it's an avenue I'd like to explore more and more, getting that direct interaction with readers.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think, Kickstarter is a great way to do that, as well as, I would just say Kickstarter. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
But Paul, Kara, if you guys want to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, I have a question. It's funny. The first work of yours that I read was November, the first volume, and I really loved it. It was very striking visually, and I just really enjoyed the art style. And when I went back to read the first volume, Infinite Loop, I was struck how different the art was on that earlier book. So I'm curious, what changed for you with your approach to art? Were there certain artists that you were influenced by to sort of change your style to what you're doing now in November?
A lot of it is not really conscious. I guess I grew up. First of all, I was really young when we did the Infinite Loop. I was 25, I think, and I'm almost 32 now. So it's a big difference in the life, and my interests have changed or evolved, and the things that I like have evolved, and of course, all of that has an influence on my work. So that's the first thing. And also, it's just, practice. When we did the Infinite Loop, every page was, mountain that I didn't know whether or not I could climb. I was learning, the basics and how to tell the story, efficiently, and how to draw anatomy, facial anatomy. All of that was really, really new, since it was our first professional book. And for November, now that I'm more comfortable with just the drawing part, the anatomy part, and all that stuff, I feel like I can focus a bit more on style and explore more style, and try new things as well. I guess all of that is a combination of factors.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because right away the artwork on November looks simpler, but it's more complex. There's more nuance to it in the storytelling, and I was really struck by that. So that balance between those two, the simplicity of the artwork, yet the sort of depth of storytelling you're able to do. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that, and a lot of what I'm trying to tend to and look for is simplify. It's something that I used to have a hard time understanding. More is not better with art.
Yeah.
And I guess a part of it is that I was feeling maybe a bit of a fraud, and so I would add lines to I did my work. I did I did what I could to add as many lines as possible, and it takes some time to really kind of understand and understand how to apply that less lines is better,
right.
But the theory, but the actual act of putting in the practice takes so long. It's a really slow process, and a process that you don't have as an artist too much. Your brain does that stuff, in the background. your brain figures out that
Yeah.
stuff, but it's so little of that is conscious. You just have to wait until your brain is ready to communicate with your hand.
Yeah. Huh.
It's frustrating, but it's also part of it's a part of the fun. You know?
So while binge reading a lot of your work in preparation for this show, like November, Infinite Loop, and some of your Star Wars pieces, I was struck by how a recurring theme for the female characters that you illustrate or write seems to be that like you're letting them be tired. And I know this sounds like really simple, but I think with so many female characters, especially the ones that are drawn in a very feminine style, the way you draw a lot of yours, they have to be like perfect in some way or like accommodating of others. And I feel like the through line for your female characters is that they're given moments where they're allowed to be tired, they're allowed to be tempted to give up, and then they just don't. And I'm not trying to overreach here, but I sensed a little bit of maybe a parallel with your journey of becoming an artist. So I'm wondering if you drew on personal experience with those.
Most of the characters I've worked on, I have not written. So I don't know why, or I guess, when on the Infinite Loop, I worked with Pierre, who's my partner. And so he knows me, and he is attracted to a certain kind of female characters, that are a bit more true to life and true to what actually women can be than the traditional and, caricature women figure that we used to see in comics, and that less so now. But I don't know why exactly. I work on characters that are like that. I don't know if it's me that choose those stories or the writers that I work with that come to me with this kind of stories. But it's true. I do feel attracted to characters that, start fights and hard fights and long roads, and they get tired. They are humane, and it's a recurring theme. You're right.
On a more, I guess, superficial level, something to me that I notice in a lot of your work is your female characters tend to have short, dark manicures.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering if this is also your personal aesthetic, or if this is just a look that you like for the comics that you draw.
I'm looking at my hands right now. I don't have nail polish because I can't, because of original art, and but yeah, I guess it's my personal style. You got. And also, I like, most of the women, especially in action stories, I don't see how you could do adventure stuff with long nails. It's unpractical. It seems like that way to me. And also the characters in November, I really don't see them growing long nails. It's just
no.
Maybe press-ons though. Maybe they were press-ons.
Yeah, maybe. But I guess it's a combination of the characters that I work on and also my personal preference, I guess.
Well, speaking of November, I actually had a question about the colors in the book. I know Matt Hollingsworth did the color work on the book, but I was really curious. There seemed to be such a synchronicity between the art and the coloring. I wondered how that process went. Did you collaborate on the color palette he had in mind before you handed the artwork off, or did you trust his instincts? I'm curious what that process was.
Oh, I trusted him 100%. One thing that is good with creator owned is that you get to choose the people that you're gonna collaborate with, and I had been a huge fan of his work for a very long time, and that was a chance for me to work with him. And also I felt like November had to be, with a story that is so peculiar, and the rhythm and the storytelling is really unique. And my art is simplified as well, and we needed something that would match that would be as powerful, but in a simplistic way, and I felt like Matt would be the perfect person for it. And so we gave him the initial influences that we had for that story. That was Batman Year One, Mazzucchelli's.
Okay.
And that sort of colors that are flats, but also a bit pop at some points, and kind of original and unique, and not what you would expect from a Batman story. And so that the only thing that we told him is that's it, flats, and something that would could be a cousin of Batman Year One. And he came up with the color palettes. I could have never come up with the palettes that he picked. It's just the most original and kind of out of the box coloring. It's really special. And I just went over some colors for volume 3, and it's incredible how he can manage with so little colors, because the palettes are really restricted. He can come up with variants of that same color scheme, and it's incredible. It's really, I don't think I've ever seen something like that. It's so no, he knows how to do his own work.
Sure. I mean,
and let him do it.
Well, yeah, it's very striking, and that's funny you mentioned Batman Year One, because I just reread that, and I can definitely see the connection, the influence. That's interesting.
And it's interesting how he sort of took that and modernized it. Not that it needed to be modernized, but he came up with a new version of what Year One could have been, and that's perfect. And it's absolutely it's something that I hadn't pictured the colors that way at all, but it's what the story needed. And it's interesting because one thing that I told him and that he did not listen to, and I'm glad that he didn't, was I wanted the inks to be black. And there isn't a single ink that is not colored in the book. He colored all the inks, and it's beautiful. It's perfect. And so, you see, the only thing I told him, he didn't listen to, and that was, it's good that he didn't.
Yeah, I guess that's when you trust your collaborators to that level, I guess it pays off. So, yeah.
Absolutely, of course. And you want to surround yourself with people that you trust 100%. And that's what we did for November. Every member of the team is just is supremely talented, and there's really nothing left to say when they turn pages in.
Yeah, reading through that book, really, like the momentum as you're reading it, I almost like couldn't put it down, like as I felt like I was just rolling on a boulder down a hill. It's really fantastic. And I was curious to know, writing or, working on a book like this, how does that compare to working on, single issue stories like The Infinite Loop or Super Freaks or something like that, that's very compact down to like 20 to 22 pages versus this 78-ish kind of is it close to bande dessinée length style graphic novel?
We get more time for it, not to produce the book, but just to tell the story. There is more room to make a scene last and have character exchanges that we have to cut short for a monthly comics. And as an artist who's really into body language and facial expressions, it's golden to me to be able to, see a scene through. And it's a luxury, and I love it.
Yeah, I really like the like breathing room you get to actually have maybe extra panels or even extra pages to kind of make sure that a specific emotion or a specific thing is evoked throughout the book. I mean, I was just skimming through it before we started recording today, and it's just like, oh man, there's extra emphasis on a lot of different emotions, and I think you really couldn't get that with a single issue book or like a month-to-month book.
Yeah, and on a month-to-month book, you'd have to spell out, because otherwise you get to the 24 pages and nothing had happened. Nothing has happened. So, but on a graphic novel format this big, the lines are taken out, and it's the paneling and the characters acting with each other, their looks and how their posture, that tells the story. So it's a lot more responsibility to me as well, because there's no line to save what's at stake in the scene. If I mess up, you don't get it.
Right.
So it's different. I love both, but it's really different.
Yeah.
So you have actually a bit of an acting background, and the way you've been describing how you approach these scenes, it sounds like you are maybe pulling from some of that experience to help bring expression to the characters that you draw.
Absolutely. And it's probably why I went into acting in the first place. I didn't realize that at that time, but I think what attracted me was the body language. And it's, I spent a lot of years trying to break into acting, and I failed miserably. And it's a kind of good, and now for me to know that, okay, all those years weren't lost. I learned some stuff that I'm putting to use now.
And I guess on that note, is there anything that we could find you in to watch, or no? I'm just kidding.
Oh my God,
just kidding.
no, nothing. That's the thing. I didn't do a thing. I spent 7 years in castings and oh my God, all that sort of stuff, and I did nothing. And that's good, because now I would have stuff on the internet but nothing.
Right.
So that's good.
Are there any movies or TV shows or anything like that you particularly pull from? Like if you're trying to study like a specific style or a specific emotion that someone is evoking with their body or with their face, is there like a go-to movie or TV show that you think about when you want to like really kind of hone in on something? Or I don't know if you use references like that at all?
No, I usually don't, because gesture comes naturally to me, and I tend to have facilities. It's easy for me to see a thing play out with gesture. So I try to focus on what I have in mind. But I do study movies and for composition mostly,
Gotcha.
and for black and white balance. But I study compositions in watching movies, of course, because there are so many, directors and cinematographers that have, unique styles, and that we need to learn from. Recently, I rewatched Seven Samurai.
Oh, nice.
And all the Kurosawa movies are incredible, but the composition, it's flawless. So I try, like every artist, try to channel that into my work somehow.
I'm looking forward to your samurai-based comic that's going to come out after this November series is done.
Yeah, that would be great.
I noticed while looking at your Twitter feed in particular that you do a lot of like retweets and sharing of the work of other artists that you admire. And I was wondering if you wanted to direct the attention of our listeners to any particular artists that we maybe don't pay as much attention to as we all should.
Whew.
No pressure.
We'll put you right on the spot with that one.
Yeah. There are a lot, but as always, when I'm asked questions like that, I'm, blanking. But I adore, but I guess he's not an unknown. He's very famous, so I'm not discovering anything, but Michael Lemming's work has influenced me a lot. So he's one of the people that I know I look up to, and I try to understand how we can make these beautiful pieces. I love Vanessa Del Rey's work.
Yes. Oh man.
Yeah. She's and lately, and I've told him many times, and I hope I'm not butchering his name, but Matches Bergara. I hope I'm saying that right. I think he's working on Little Blazer right now. And again, I'm not exactly sure if it's the book he's on, but he is an incredible artist. He's working on Coda with Simon Spurrier.
Oh, yes. Okay. I knew that name from somewhere. I could not place it.
He is absolutely incredible. He does watercolor commissions that are mind-blowing. And I told him, I tweeted it a couple days ago, that every time I see one of his pieces, I'm like, okay, I need to learn watercolor, because whatever he's doing, it's insane. And then I remembered that it has nothing to do with watercolors. He's just so good. And yeah, you can't really buy that. But yeah, I've been in awe of his work recently.
And just in terms of mediums that you work in, do you typically do all of your work digitally, or is there like a physical penciling and inking that you use, or does it vary by book?
So the Infinite Loop, I did 100% on paper. Then I got a Cintiq, and I worked 100% digital for 5 years, because it helped me try new things without being afraid of messing up the page and having to start over. So in that sense, that was a fantastic learning tool. I was able to explore and experiment a lot more than on paper. But when we started in November, I decided that I wanted to ink on paper again, because my digital inking, and it's not true for all digital inking, but the way I did it was a bit too clean, very animated. And that worked for some of the stuff that I worked on. But for November, we needed something that was a bit more gritty and more toothy. So I went back to inking on paper. And my goal has been to be back to paper 100%. So for the past couple of weeks, I've been doing a mix of pencils, and then I scan my pages and I touch them up, and then I print them in blue and ink them on paper. So my goal is to come back to paper 100%. So I'm in the process of that.
Gotcha.
It's a journey.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's really interesting, because I think there's like you said, there's a lot that you can do digitally. I think I follow plenty of creators who swear by their their Cintiqs, that they're like, I love the ability to undo and stuff, but then you lose, like you said, that the toothiness of the inks, the in some cases imperfections that create this very unique style. That you can't really get in a digital form, because in the digital form you can perfect everything, whereas on paper, if it sits, that's pretty much where it is, unless you get really aggressive with whiteout, right?
Yeah. So that's part of why I wanted to move back to traditional work, and also working on a screen all day is terrible for my eyes. I wear contacts, and my eyes by the end of the day are dead. So I would like to be able to see until I'm old. So part of the reason behind that is trying to preserve my sight as well.
Gotcha. Understandable. I say that as someone who sits in front of a computer probably 12 to 16 hours a day, but yeah, I get it. I totally totally get that.
And there's something about working straight on paper that is a bit more calming for me, at least, than working on a computer. I love both, but
yeah, there's no Twitter notifications on a piece of paper. That's the thing, right?
But you know what? I have downloaded this add-on for social medias, and after 10 minutes of social media on my computer, I cannot access it at all, and I keep my phone out so I'm not distracted by social media.
Very good. That's probably something we all need.
I don't know. I'd rather work shorter days and have some free time rather than doing the same amount of work in 12 hours instead of 9 because I've been on Twitter.
Right.
Yeah.
At this point, because you do have so much work coming your way, when you're drawing, are you really putting all of your physical and emotional energy into drawing things that you are working on for a project, or do you find yourself just like doodling in your spare time and drawing for yourself too?
I try more and more to doodle, and I've always been a bit ashamed by the fact that I never had a sketchbook. I never got into the habit of working on the doodling on the sketchbook, and it kind of made me feel like a fraud because all the good artists do that, and but also I think it was because I was working too much, and by the end of the day I was like, I'd like to do something other than drawing. So I never found the time or the will really to keep one. But I've been working shorter hours for the past 6 months. Voluntarily, I want to live more life instead of work all the time. and naturally, the sketchbook thing is easier now. And I want to, pick a pen and doodle a few things during the weekend or in the evening. And in a way, I'm doing things in reverse. I'm starting to enjoy drawing for myself just now, because I started working professionally really fast, really early, and I worked long hours, 6 days a week for about 5 years, and only now I feel okay. I think my career is going okay. I can maybe relax, take more time, and be a bit less crazy about working that much.
Many comic book fans, when they're talking to creators, their number one question seems to be, how do you break into comics? And the answer is inevitably make comics. And I feel like you're kind of like an epitome of that, because it sounds like you decided to try being an artist and then just really devoted yourself to learning that craft, and like you said, drawing all these crazy hours and just doing it.
Oh yeah. So to go back a bit on what happened between my acting and my comics career, if you will. So I gave up on acting because it was going nowhere and it was making me miserable. When I was about 24 and I had no formal education. I left school when I was barely 17, and I really didn't know what to do. I knew that I wanted to be an artist, but that's, as a statement, that's kind of ridiculous because I had no skills whatsoever. So I had all that energy of wanting to be an artist, but no medium to work on. And so I discovered comics. My partner helped me discover comics, and he was writing. He wanted to be a writer for TV shows at that time, and he kind of transitions into comics, and he offered me to come on board, and I started drawing, and that's, we started working together, and we produced our first book, and that's how it happened. So not only did I had, no more time to lose because I started drawing when I was 24, and also finally something I loved, doing. So once I knew that, I just worked, and until I was okay enough to show my work to editors. So like you said, how do you break into comics? Whether you've been to school for it or whether you haven't, whether you discover comics when you were 15 or when you're 30, it's the same. You gotta make comics to break into comics.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it sounds so obvious, but I think a lot of people have this mental block over it where they're just like, oh, but I'm not as great as the people who are drawing, and therefore, like, how do I get that? And it really is just keep doing it, keep practicing.
Yeah, and you know, there's this thing, we're always looking for the magic formula, the answer to all, you know, the problems. Oh, there must be something that you did. No, really. Just work. And for some of us are lucky enough to make a living of it, and others don't. And that's, you know, there's luck also that goes into that. But definitely put in the work.
We must inevitably approach Star Wars now.
I was going to say, when are we getting to the Star Wars stuff?
Fresh in my. I know I've been good. I actually watched Rise of Skywalker last night, so it was really refreshing to go from that to reading your Princess Leia story and cleansing my palate a little bit. So, am I right that you have a cat named Padme?
Yeah.
Is this accurate?
Yeah.
Oh.
She's the sweetest. We named her Padme because we found her when we were doing the Anakin Padme story. So
that's cute. I thought you were going to say because she was an angel or something like that, but okay.
No, she just showed up one day at the door, and she was so cute, and she just stayed there staring at us. I need a home. So we gave her a home, and we named her Padme.
Oh,
that's
so
adorable.
Oh man! So of all with all the Star Wars characters and stories that you've drawn, like is this like a universe that you really enjoy diving into? And if you could do any Star Wars story or character, what's your dream one to do?
Okay, so I should come forward and say that I only watched Star Wars for the first time when I started working on Star Wars.
Oh.
We all got to start sometime.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You know, so I love Star Wars, but I'm not fluent in Star Wars, if you will.
That's okay.
There's a lot of things that I don't know about Star Wars, but what I do know, I love. So working on Star Wars visually, you know, the universe for me, it's incredible. And I always find myself sketching Star Wars characters or costumes. So because there's something about the design and the atmosphere that just appeals to me. It feels very natural. That balance between sci-fi and dirty, gritty stuff. You know, that's not all white and all perfect. That's something that I really love about the Star Wars universe. But as to if there's something that I would, or a character that I would love to draw or tell their story, I don't have one specific characters that you know I'm dying to work on. First of all, because I think you can make any characters work if the story is good enough. So no, there isn't anything that I'm thinking, oh, I need to, no, this is my bucket list, on my bucket list. For example, I didn't know Dr. Aphra very much, or that much, when I was offered the annual. And I loved working on that book because the story was fantastic. And I got to draw a lot of things that felt very Star Wars to me. I got the cantina and of course that was fantastic. But no, anything Star Wars works for me.
Well, I actually think that is a wonderful perspective to be coming in with, that anything you can kind of make it work, because with properties like Star Wars, where there is so much history, so much material written about it, I think it can be really easy to kind of get caught up in that and say, oh, well, I can't do this with this character because it's never been done before, and I don't want to upset the canon. So I think like your Princess Leia story in particular struck me because she's just lying in the snow on Hoth, and she's just there. Like, you don't ever really see Princess Leia having a moment where she's like, God, this is just a lot. So that's why I really just enjoyed that moment. And so you explaining where you are in Star Wars, that makes sense to me, because I'm like, ooh, if someone like went into making a story like that and they had just grown up on Star Wars and they knew like all of these things about Star Wars, would they necessarily have made Leia just like lie down in the snow having a pity party? And I'm like, probably not, but I really liked the pity party, so it works.
Yeah, that probably stems from knowing enough to be able to tell a Star Wars story, but not too much that we feel what's the word I'm looking for?
Like self-censoring?
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, I should say that Lucasfilm is very, very open to, stories that are different and that are Star Wars, but stories that I've never been told, or not in that way. And they always encouraged us. When you mentioned the Leia story, the Forces of Destiny, we knew from the beginning, because the creative director, Michael Sigler, told us, go crazy, do some crazy stuff with the storytelling, and we'll back you up. And this is what we want, because he loves comics. He really loves comics, and loves that it's a medium that offers a different way of telling stories, and a very unique way. And so he told us, take advantage of that. And that was very important for us to hear that, because sometimes we will, you think when you're working on such a big property, you self-censor in storytelling and say, oh, maybe they won't go for that if we do this sort of paneling, because, they want kids to understand and all that stuff that is very restricting, and most of the time untrue, because kids understand a lot more than we think. And so knowing that and having, that blessing from him was a huge help, because we went all out, and they didn't make us change anything on the storytelling. And that's why maybe it appealed to adults as well, because it's a bit daring and the storytelling is a bit different, and it works for kids as well. It's easy enough that they can understand it, and it's maybe inventive enough to keep adults interested. But that's what we went for anyway. I don't know if it lands, but that's what we went for.
Well, I liked it.
Thank you.
Well, that's interesting, because I feel that you're doing some experimental or unusual storytelling in November as well. The way the narrative plays out in that book, it feels, is quite different from a lot of comics. So is that something you're trying to do in your work, is sort of play with the storytelling, the narrative, and the rhythm of the story?
Yes, but also on November, it's all Matt. The script is very, very precise. Not the panel per se, because the panel description are very succinct. It's very just, this character is doing that. But the paneling and the rhythm, and how a panel plays with another one, and there's a beat happening go back to the book and look at the pages. And he told me recently that there's a bit happening every 3 panels. And
Okay.
Oh.
I didn't know that when I drew it. And I went back to the book and was like, oh my God, totally right. And this creates a really particular rhythm to the book. So that's all I am. But yeah, when I do my own storytelling, my own paneling, I pay attention to that too, because it's a huge part of why comics are interesting.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean
Absolutely.
doing something, insane, or break up pen borders, or it can be very simple if you think it through.
Now that you're starting to do a little more writing, when you're thinking about the story as a whole, how is that being influenced by all of your experience as an artist, looking at the scripts from other writers?
How you mean how is it different when I work with other writers, whereas when I've written my own? Is that what you? Sorry if I don't.
Sorry, no, it's okay. I realized as I said that question that it kind of ran away from me. I guess because you started as an artist and are now doing some writing. Did your work as an artist influence how you write?
I don't think it has, or I'm not aware of it. It probably has, but I don't. It's not conscious on me. I don't know. No, because when I get a script, and Matt's script are very different than the scripts that I co-write, because I never write alone. I only co-write with my partner. So I approach them very differently, just because they're told very differently. But I don't know if me working as a writer has influenced that all that much. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sure because my art skills are negligible. So I always try to think like, okay, if I was like coming from this with experience as having taken someone else's words and brought them to life on the page, would that be a reverse process? I guess it would depend on the person. So I'm just trying to unpack things a little.
Yeah, but it's probably true for artists that also write their own work, as well as working with other writers. But I should say I consider myself a lot more an artist than a writer. Yeah, I don't think it has influenced me that much. Maybe if I worked with writers that weren't very good, maybe. But because you tend to see maybe that doesn't work quite well. But working with Matt, I mean, there is like nothing to say. It's perfect. So
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, I guess we're kind of running out of tape here, so I just have one final question that actually comes from one of our listeners who knew that we were going to be doing this episode. You have a big section of your art book that is full of commissions, and the question is there a specific character that you get asked for commissions the most? And I guess the follow-up to that would be, is there a character that you prefer to draw or you like to draw more for commissions and things like that?
I'm having a really, really hard time on Spider-Man. I don't know why. It's really hard for me to draw Spider-Man. But I'm happy with people, coming with this request, because that way I can improve. But this character is really hard for me. In terms of what I prefer, again, it's not specific characters, because I didn't grow up reading comics. So I never developed, a specific fandom for a specific character. I love them because of their potential visual possibilities, potential. But I've noticed something interesting. Has my career has evolved, and I'm working on more grade A books, the commission requests that I got recently are very different from the one that I maybe had a couple of years ago. I have a lot more male characters. I used to have exclusively female characters. So that was interesting to see that readers can now project my style to male characters as well. So that's fun. And I got a few requests from movies, characters from movies.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and I love that so much that I'm thinking of, opening a list exclusively for movie commissions, because that's great. It's, you watch a movie and I guess like you would do a cover or anything, synthesize what made that movie what it is and make it your own. I found the process really interesting, because commissions can be a way as an artist to just make a few more bucks. But when I used to approach that in the past like that, and it didn't feel very fulfilling. I felt like I was doing, okay, I'm doing this not for the money, but that was the main drive behind it. And
I
realized I need to have more fun with this. I need to explore. And so I started seeing commissions as a way to try different things and see if they worked or not. And I love commissions now, specifically because of that. So it's not very much about which character, but more about how I can do something interesting and visually different with that character,
Gotcha. Well, I will be definitely reaching out to get a very curvy, excited John Wick that's gritty, but also very voluptuous or something. Just to mix up the whole styles, please.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fun.
Well, I guess, Kara, Paul, I don't know if you have any last quick questions that you wanted to throw out. I want to make sure we wrap up before we literally run out of tape.
No, just I'm so excited that you came on the show to talk to us, because I absolutely love your work. I've been trying so hard to not fangirl this whole time, but but please keep making awesome things so I can keep reading them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I can't wait to go back and reread November now too, with this background, this knowledge here, and then I'm anxiously awaiting the second volume. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the second volume, according to Image's website, is supposed to be out on June 3rd, so just in time for folks to listen to this episode and then immediately go grab their copy. But
yes.
So I guess to wrap everything up here, Elsa, where can people find you on the internet, and what other books should they look out for other than November that's got your name on it?
So I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but I say mainly Twitter. What other books? I've done a lot of creator-owned books. So besides November, Super Freaks is a book that I co-wrote for Comixology Originals, and The Infinite Loop, which was our first book and is very dear to me still. And that's the main things that I worked on, in addition to Star Wars and all that stuff.
Right. And just that little thing known as Star Wars.
Yep.
Well, very cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. We really, really appreciate it. This is such an amazing conversation. I have a whole slew of questions about Super Freaks and Comixology Originals that we didn't get to, so maybe we'll have to have you come back after Volume 2 is out. Maybe when you get that next Kickstarter, maybe we'll have a conversation about that. But that's way in the future. Who knows? Yeah. But yeah, I guess you can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow Kara at Kara S. Sam. You can follow Paul at Oh Hi Polly. And you can follow me at Mike Rappin and the show at IRCB Podcast, where I try to post on Twitter and Instagram whenever I can. But you know what? It's a busy thing trying to manage 2 Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts. This show and many of our subscriber-only episodes are powered by fans like you on Patreon. You can join us now at patreon.com/IRCB podcast. And if you haven't already, please rate and review the show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you listen to podcasts. You can join us on Discord at ircbpodcast.com/Discord, and make sure to tell a friend or 2 about the show. Infinity Shred does all of the music for IRCB, and they are the best band in the universe. Xander is a very good friend, a great GM. He's also the editor of our show. So thank you, Xander, for all the time you put into this. Thank you to Kara and Paul for being on this episode. Thank you doubly to Elsa for being a guest on this show. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.